Hey guys, so I'm going to pick up on chapter 7, or I'm sorry, chapter 15, Dangerous Lies of J.A. White's Nightbooks. And we're getting to the really, really exciting part. Here we go. Alex hadn't been lying to Natasha. In order to write his next story, he really did need to ask Yasmin some questions about magical oils. By the time they were done, he had filled nearly 2 pages with notes. "Why did you make it seem like I know more about this stuff than she does?" Yasmin asked. "We both know that isn't true." "I wanted to see how she reacted when I questioned her expertise," Alex said. "Have you heard her grill me after I read a story? I say I don't know this or I don't know that." "Yeah," Yasmin said, stifling a grin. "I've noticed how much that gets under your skin." "It does not," Alex said. Yasmin raised her eyebrows. "Okay, maybe a little bit. More than a little bit. The important thing is that Natasha is a know-it-all, and when I claimed you know more than she does, she couldn't take it. She reacted just the way I hoped." "You wanted to get her mad?" "Yes," Alex said. "Angry people don't think clearly. They let things slip. We can use that to our advantage." "There's a few disadvantages to getting Natasha mad, too. Like she might lose her temper and turn us into a matching pair of socks." "I know," Alex said, "but if we really want to escape, we need to start taking some risks." He explained the rest of his plan. Yasmin listened with growing incredulity. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, but like when you're incredulous about something, you can't believe it. You're like, what? So, "I don't know," she said when she had finished. "It might work, if we're lucky. But wouldn't it be safer to search the books in the library first?" "Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Unicorn Girl did write the missing ingredient somewhere." "Even if she did," Alex said, "it could take us weeks for us to find it. So many bad things could happen before then. I might not be able to think of a story. Natasha could wake up on the wrong side of the bed and decide she's tired of both of us. The sooner we get out of here, the better. But if Natasha figures out what you're trying to do..." "She won't," Alex said. "I'll be careful. Like a word ninja." "You better be," Yasmin said, "or this is going to be the shortest story you ever told." After that, Alex settled into his chair and started writing. The story came easily. It turned out that he wasn't suffering from writer's block after all. He just wasn't ready to write his ghost story yet. Once he changed gears, the words flowed like running water. He finished just before dinner. Yasmin had outdone herself. Honey-glazed ham, scalloped potatoes, cornbread, and fresh applesauce. There was far too much food for one person to eat, and Alex knew afterward he would have to dump most of it into the trash. Natasha didn't leave leftovers, and she refused to allow the children a single bite. It was the worst of her casual cruelties. As Alex refilled the witch's glass, the succulent smells of the feast teased his empty stomach. He imagined her taking a sip of lemonade and falling face first into her potatoes sound asleep. The image brought a tiny smile to his lips. "What's wrong with you?" Natasha snapped, turning in his direction. "Why are you happy?" "Just looking forward to tonight's story," Alex said. "I think you'll like it." Natasha shrugged and tore off a piece of cornbread. Alex was no longer surprised by her indifference, though he still found it puzzling. Despite her impressive library, Natasha had given no indication that she truly loved stories the way he did. They were there to serve a purpose, like a hastily prepared meal. All she cared about is keeping the apartment calm and under control, he thought, feeding its darkness like you'd toss hunks of meat to a wild beast. Alex wished he understood more about the nature of apartment 4E. Why couldn't Natasha use her magic to control it? Did it have a mind of its own? For the most part, the apartment helped Natasha by giving her extra space she needed and bringing new captives to her door. But there were other times, especially when the apartment was in earthquake mode, that Natasha seemed almost afraid of it. Perhaps solving this mystery would help them. Perhaps not. Right now, Alex had to remain focused on the task at hand. After Natasha finished her second slice of pecan pie, they moved into the living room. Every movement he made seemed forced. Every word he spoke sounded wooden and exaggerated. He felt like a bad actor in a horror movie. "It's just your imagination," he thought. "There's no way the witch has any idea." "You're not telling me everything," Natasha said. Alex nearly dropped the nightbook in his hands. His throat suddenly felt as dry as a sandstorm. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "Don't play stupid with me," Natasha said. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." Alex hesitated, afraid to speak. "There's a reason you wanted to destroy your nightbooks," Natasha exclaimed. "Something happened. Something that gave you that final little nudge. Maybe that very same day." Alex let out a slow sigh of relief. This isn't about tonight's plan at all, he thought. Nothing happened, Alex said. I just decided that it was time for a change. I wonder if I can make your nose grow like Pinocchio, Natasha said, staring at his face with a thoughtful expression. I've never tried it before. Something might go terribly wrong. She reached over and poked the tip of his nose. But you know me, I'm always up for a little experimentation. Alex swallowed nervously. Why is she bringing this up now? It's not worth talking about, he said. Natasha squeezed the arms of her chair and pulled herself forward. She grinned with triumph, her eyes popping out. So something did happen, she exclaimed. You admit it. If Alex and the witch had been alone, he would have just told her. Living through that morning again would have been humiliating, but in the end, Natasha's opinion didn't really matter to him. The problem was Yasmin. Once she discovered the truth, he was afraid that she wouldn't want to be his friend anymore. Tell me, Natasha said. Now. No, Alex said. Natasha's mouth fell open in a look of exaggerated surprise that Alex almost laughed. He wondered how long it had been since someone had refused her. I'm not asking, she said, her face growing flushed like a spoiled child. You either tell me or... Yasmin shrieked and jumped off her feet. You feel that? Natasha gave her a quizzical look. Feel what? The floor just trembled, Yasmin said. I think the apartment is about to have one of its earthquakes. I didn't feel anything, Natasha said, but there was a slight quiver in her voice. I was right, Alex thought. The apartment does frighten her. There, Yasmin exclaimed. Another one. I don't think you can feel it because your feet aren't on the floor. Alex's feet were on the floor, and he felt nothing. It was clear that Yasmin was lying. She had seen that Alex was treading in dangerous waters and made up an entire earthquake as a distraction. I felt it too, Natasha, Alex said, opening his Nightbooks. I should probably start. It feels like it's going to be a bad one. The witch spun in his direction. Then what are you waiting for? She screeched, clawing nervously at her chair. Read. Alex paused a moment to meet Yasmin's eyes. Thank you. And he began. Okay, so we're going to read another one of his stories, and it's in that kind of handwritten font. Here we go. Neverworm. The great monster had terrorized the land for as long as anyone could remember. It swatted away armies and laughed at fire. Nothing could stop it. In desperation, the witches joined forces and cast a special sleeping spell. No one really thought it would work, but it did. The great monster closed its eyes and toppled over. 1,000 trees fell beneath its weight. At long last, its reign of terror was over. The next step should have been to kill the great monster before it woke up. After all, the monster was not immortal. It could be slain like any other beast, with spell or sword or spear. Unfortunately, precious gems grew inside the great monster's mouth, like minerals in a cave. They would stop growing when the monster took its last breath. And people are greedy. Instead of killing the sleeping monster, the witches built a city in its shadow. Over the years, they grew rich and prosperous from the monster's gems. They never went inside the mouth themselves. Each month, they selected a young boy, always from a poor family, and tossed him into the gaping maw. Sometimes the boy returned to the city with treasures held high. Most of the time, however, the boy was never seen again. The great monster might have been asleep, but it still needed to eat. In time, the original enchantment wore off, but the witches made sure that the great monster's slumber continued. Every morning, they scaled its body and funneled a powerful sleeping potion down its 5th ear. The recipe for this potion was as old as time itself. Rat bones dissolved in a pitcher plant, widow orchid, powdered beetle shells. The most important ingredient, however, was the bindweed, a rare plant that grew in swamps and sucked up smells instead of water. Bindweed was the only thing in the world that could hide the powerful stench of the sleeping potion. This was important because the great monster had as many noses as teeth. Without bindweed, the terrible smell of the potion would wake it up. 1,000 years passed in this manner, and then one day all the bindweed withered and died. The wisest witches gathered together to pool their knowledge. Was there a different ingredient they could use in place of the bindweed? Serpent's tongue? Snail mucus? Charred plugsweed? Nothing worked. The potion smelled worse than ever, so the witches called on the great warriors of the city. There was no other choice. They would have to kill the great monster, once and for all, before it was too late. That night, while the warriors sharpened their spears, the baker's daughter entered the golden hall. She was small, both in stature and age, but very, very clever. The other witches had never met her before. She lived in the poor section of the city, where a proper witch never went. "I found a replacement for bindweed," the baker's daughter announced. "It'll take the smell away so you can put the great monster back to sleep." "Nonsense," said the eldest witch. "Nothing can replace bindweed." "Nightberry juice," proclaimed the baker's daughter. The witches laughed. Nightberries made excellent pies, but they had no magical properties at all. "Foolish child," said the eldest witch. "You know nothing of real magic." "Let me prove it to you," said the baker's daughter. "Give me some of your famous sleeping potion." The witch snapped her fingers, and a servant brought out a vial of the potion. It smelled like a dead skunk that had been lying in the sun for days. The girl pinched her nose and withdrew a bottle of violet liquid from her cloak. She poured a drop into the vial. The smell went away instantly. "Impossible," the eldest witch said. "Nightberry juice doesn't hold that kind of power." She ordered the servant to bring out a second vial of the sleeping potion. The baker's daughter added a drop of liquid from her bottle. The smell vanished again. The eldest witch was convinced. "Tell the warriors to stand down," she announced, snatching the bottle from the girl's hand. "Our problem is solved. The monster will continue to sleep, and we shall mine its gems as always." The baker's daughter watched her with a curious expression. "Perhaps you were hoping for a reward?" the eldest witch asked with a cruel twist of her lips. "If so, you should have kept your ingredient a secret. You could have named your treasure. Once you proved it worked. But now that we know it's as simple as nightberry juice, there's no reason to reward you." The baker's daughter bowed her head. "How foolish of me," she said. "I wish I was wise like a witch." "On the other hand, we can't have you telling people that you were the one who solved our problem," the witch said. "You'll leave at once and never return. A horse and supplies wait for you on the city walls. We will tell your parents that you drowned in the river." "My mother and father are already dead," the baker's daughter said, "as is my brother." There was a sharpness to her voice that had not been there before. "Even easier, then," said the witch, not interested. She waved her hand. There was a flash of light, and the baker's daughter found herself on the outskirts of the city. An old geling was waiting for her as promised. The girl rode the horse to the top of a large hill a few miles from the city. It was as good a spot as any from which to watch. She sat down in the grass. In the distance, the great monster slumbered. The baker's daughter could see its claws from here, as big as trees, but far sharper. She imagined what was happening right now. No doubt the witches had already made a batch of new potion with the liquid from the girl's bottle. Someone would be pouring the potion into the fifth ear, thinking that she was saving everyone in the entire city. The baker's daughter smiled. The eldest witch was right. Nightberry juice had no magical properties, but the bottle that the baker's daughter brought to the witches had been filled with more than just nightberry juice. There was a pinch of neverworm in there as well, from the patch that the baker's daughter had found while poisoning all the bindweed. Such a possibility had never occurred to the oldest witch, for who would be mad enough to do such a thing? Neverworm not only erased the smell of any potion it was added to, it erased all the magic as well. In fact, just the tiniest touch of neverworm could undo the most powerful enchantment. The baker's daughter only wished the rest of her family could be here to see her revenge. Her sweet brother, who had been thrown into the mouth of the great monster and never returned. Her poor father, dead of a broken heart, and her mother, who followed him soon afterward. She missed them with a love both fierce and terrible. The girl removed a frosted roll from her cloak. She had baked it earlier this morning, using her family's recipe. As the monster awoke and the screams began, she took a tiny bite. It was delicious. I love that story. The misting room had disappeared several minutes beforehand, giving Alex a clear view of Natasha's face. She looked livid. "What was that?" she asked. Alex tried to look as hurt as possible. "You didn't like it?" he asked. "Really, I wrote it for you. I figured since the story was about magic, you might—" "Why was the witch fooled so easily by a simple girl?" she shrieked, leaping to her feet. She poked him in the chest with a long nail of her index finger. "Are you saying I'm stupid? That I'm gullible? Is that what you're trying to tell me?" Natasha was so self-centered that she assumed the story was about her. Alex had hoped this would be the case. If she's upset, she's more likely to slip up and tell us what we need to know. Still, he had to be careful. He couldn't push her too far. "It's just a story," Alex said. "I needed a foolish witch in order to make the ending work. She's just make-believe, a character. Obviously a brilliant witch like you, a witch who knows more about magic than anyone else in the world, a witch so amazing that—" He saw Yasmin give a little shake of her head. "Too much, too much. Anyway, you would never have fallen for it." Natasha nodded, drinking it up. "That's right," she said. "I would have seen right through her." You would have tested the potion first, Alex said. Made sure it actually worked before you sent someone to use it on the monster. Obviously, Natasha said. And you would have investigated why all the bindweed died up to begin with, Alex said. I mean, the only herb that can erase the smell of a potion suddenly gets wiped out? That's pretty suspicious. Natasha laughed into the back of her hand. What? Alex said. Bindweed, she said. Yasmin tell you to use that? That part of your research? Alex brightened. You noticed, he exclaimed. I thought you'd like the story better if I used real magical ingredients instead of just making them up. Yasmin was a big help. Neverworm isn't real, obviously, Yasmin admitted. And I had to guess about what ingredients might be used in a sleeping potion, but I'm pretty sure that recipe could work. She ignored Natasha's dismissive chortle. And I know for a fact that bindweed conceals magical orders. It was Claire who told me that, and she was an expert. Yasmin glared at Natasha in defiance, as though daring the witch to contradict her. The witch stopped laughing. There's only one expert, girl, Natasha said. Me. And I'm here to tell you that bindweed is good for exactly one thing. Combining magical ingredients that would otherwise be incapable of working together. It's magic glue, nothing more. Yasmin shook her head in amusement, as though Natasha were a poor student who had just added when she should have subtracted. No, she said. That's totally wrong. Flames erupted in Natasha's eyes. What did you say? She asked. Alex sent a warning glance in Yasmin's direction. They had planned to get Natasha upset, but not that upset. One more word and she might find herself a porcelain figure. Yasmin ignored him. Bindweed makes the foulest magical orders vanish, Yasmin said, stubbornly crossing her arms. I've seen it work. Impossible, Natasha said, but there was the slightest flicker of doubt in her tone. She's not as sure of herself as she seems, Alex thought. Remember that order of beauty oil you had me make a few weeks back? Yasmin asked. The shrew feet were past their prime, and the whole batch ended up stinking really bad. I added lavender, lemongrass, all the usual, hoping to cancel it out, but nothing worked, so I threw in a few sprigs of bindweed. Yasmin snapped her fingers. Ta-da! No more odor. You're wrong, Natasha exclaimed. Her uncertainty had passed. Now there was only anger. Bindweed doesn't do that. Except it did, Yasmin replied, so I really don't see what other explanation. Alex clapped his hands together as though he had just thought of a great idea. Hey, I know, he suggested. Maybe you got your ingredients confused. You thought it was bindweed, but it was, I don't know, what takes away smell. He shrugged and turned to Natasha for assistance. The witch, clearly warming to the idea that Yasmin had made a mistake, was quick to respond. Cinnaroot, she said. It's the only thing that would have actually worked. Alex nodded, as though this was only of passing interest, but there were fireworks exploding in his head. Got it! Oh, Yasmin exclaimed, smacking herself in the forehead. This is embarrassing. I had just used cinnaroot in a different oil, and I guess I might have gotten it confused with bindweed. They don't even look alike, Natasha said. Her air of superiority returned in full force. How stupid can you be? You're right, Yasmin said. Of course I'm right, Natasha replied, raising her chin high. I'm the witch. She snapped her fingers in Alex's direction. Well, what are you doing? Correct your story before you forget, and if you need to do any more research in the future, come to me. Got it? Got it, Alex said, removing a pencil from his pocket. He erased his first use of bindweed and then looked up with a shy smile. Does cinnaroot start with an S or a C? I just want to make sure I get it right. They are so clever. Were you impressed with how they got the information, or were you kind of like, whatever? I was pretty impressed. I love how they did that. Alright guys, I'm going to pause there, but I will come back and do another video later. Bye!